podcast for you guys to making it. And our first question is sort of, what was your expectations coming into the ISL, and what was your training like during this COVID environment? I mean, coming into this ISL 2020 season. Emily, do you want to start?
Yeah, of course. So before we left for ISL, so I'm from New York. So things were definitely a little hectic in New York, especially in the beginning. By the time summer came around, outdoor pools were open. So we were able to train outside, which was good, but still pool space was very limited. And before I left for ISL, we were still outside through, the end of October, which was crazy because it was getting very cold here in New York. And just ISL was honestly a blessing just to be able to have pool space, be able to train full time and not really stress about whether, the pool was going to shut down any day or any minute, or we wouldn't have enough, we'd have too many people that we wouldn't be able to swim in the pool because they started limiting numbers. So it was a really good experience, just stress-free environment where, I knew every day when I woke up, I would have ample pool time, ample pool space, and be able to figure it out. I mean, the biggest stressor that I had when I was there was worrying about what would happen when I, finished ISL after the 6 weeks and had to come back home. And at the time, we weren't sure if pools would still be open by the time we got back. So it was really nice to be able to not worry for a little while, for a few weeks, and just focus on training and racing again.
Thanks, Emily. And how's your training now? Is it better? Is there pool availability for you now?
Yeah, so luckily we haven't had another shutdown. The timing is definitely off, so we weren't able to get back to our normal pool because it's a high school where we typically train. So, a lot of different teams were fighting over pool space and pool time. So when I got back, I had to get back to 8 to 10 p.m. practices, which is crazy. It's not fun at all swimming that late. We were doing that for a few weeks now. Starting in December, we started at 7:15, so 7:15 to 9:15 p.m. At night, and I still train with the club team, so that's with club swimmers. So that's good, and that's pretty set in stone right now. And then I train in the mornings with a bunch of post-grads or college swimmers that are home for the holidays or weren't even able to go back to college or start college. They have an hour and a half in the mornings that I'm able to train at, and they invited me to come swim there. So luckily, I think we're doing pretty well. I'm hoping now that the vaccine is out and starting to be handed out, we won't have another shutdown, but it's just it's stressful. You never know what's going to happen. Every day you wake up and you hope that, you'll be able to go swim and train and not worry about it. But it's a reality now.
No, it sounds like you have a crazy schedule right now as well. And yeah, it makes sense that the 1 month in Budapest with a stable schedule, stable food source, stable, reliable transportation. It makes sense why it was a blessing.
Yeah,
was it a similar experience for you, Felix?
I think I got really lucky with practice conditions and all of that stuff during COVID. I mean, I was a senior at Michigan and my last NCAAs were canceled. So that was a bummer. But right after that, I decided to go home back to Austria, and Austria provided me with pool space throughout the summer and spring. So that was great. And then I started studying here in the UK at Loughborough University, and we could swim here as well. So I didn't really have a big gap of not swimming. But what was missing was racing, was competing. And so I trained basically for a long time without ever competing. And that was the great thing about ISL for me. I knew I had those 6 weeks in October, November, where I had to get in shape for something. It's really hard to get in the pool every day when you don't know that you're ever competing. But ISL giving me the opportunity to race for 6 weeks was definitely a reason for me to go to work out and get better every day.
Yeah, definitely, Felix. And for example, you mentioned that you were able to swim during the entire summer in England and in Austria. You come to your first ISL match, swam, for example, in the 400 freestyle at 3:41. You dropped 2 seconds from your former PB. And on the next match, you go 3:37. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. How was it?
Yeah, I think it is a couple of things came together for my second swim. First of all, I had this first race in a long time. So I had the 400 freestyle. I knew how all the details were working out, what I had to work on. So we basically took like the first race and broke it apart and analyzed it and saw what we can bring to the second race. And I think we had a pretty big gap of like 8 days from the first match to the second match. So we actually really had time to work on those things to get better in. And I mean, in the first match, I also swam the 4x100 free relay right before the 400. And Coach Martin took me out of that relay before the second match. And it really helped me getting ready for that 400. And yeah, I think that a lot of different things came together in that race. First of all, just having racing experience, but also trusting that the team has been doing so well in the first match and that we can continue that momentum into the second match. And yeah, I think it was just a lot of different factors which ended up coming together at the right time.
Makes sense. Thank you, Felix. Emily, a question to you. I mean, the general trend in the season of ISL for the athletes was to gradually drop time, starting from their match one respective and finishing with their last match. For you, you had a bit of your ups and lows, but in general, you started with around a 218 in your 200 breaststroke, and you dropped to a 216 during the semifinal, and you dropped from a 105.6, 105.7 in the 100 breast to a 104.5 in the semis, which was a steady progression. Would you attribute this to the schedule, to the reliability of everything we had in Budapest, or was this just the racing experience that you didn't have the opportunity to race for so many months, and now you get to race again, and this racing opportunities build up and you steadily get better? Could you please open up on that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I think it's a little bit what Felix was saying. Those first couple meets, a lot of us it had been months since like March that we raced, aside from like maybe racing in practice a few times, but a really long time to go without racing, especially, when you hit this level, you kind of want to be racing quite frequently throughout the year. So before our first match, I think everyone had really low expectations. We were all really excited to be there. But we had no idea. And I think this was like pretty much all athletes in the ISL. We're kind of like, either this is going to go really great because we've been training so hard and working so hard, and we haven't been able to race in so long that we're either going to, drop loads of time real quick right here, or it's going to be a little rusty and we're going to have to like figure out how to race and that race schedule and race plan again and strategy. Because I think just like racing a lot is really important. It helps you gain a strategy. It's practicing pretty much. Even though you're racing and suiting up, you're still practicing your technique and you're practicing, your race strategy. So for me personally, I think it was being with the team that played a huge role. I mean, it was so fun practicing with a big group of people again, even though a lot of us were doing, our own things, just having people there in the pool, pro swimmers to learn from, to work with, was really inspiring. And it had been such a long time since we raced. And I think once I kind of got into that racing groove again and, were able to practice steadily throughout the 2-3 weeks or 2 weeks before we started racing, it definitely helped a lot. So, I mean, I had a lot of fun. I was really happy with the way I performed. I did much better this year than I did last year. I think in part that was from, really hard training and just growing as an athlete over the past year, 6 months, I think helped. But I definitely think that the experience in Budapest and the ample pool time and, being able to train and focus on racing without, the stress of pool shutting down helped a lot.
Thank you, Emily. And yeah, congrats on your performance on the semifinal. That win on the two breast was amazing to see.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, and Emily, also talking about that 200 breaststroke, and you mentioned all the difficulties that you have gone through these past couple of weeks since you arrived from the ISL bubble. I saw a video from your 200-yard breaststroke. I mean, that 205 was impressive. How did you feel? Did you think that the ISL give you more confidence leading to that time trial?
Yeah, I think definitely the ISL gave me a lot more confidence. I mean, just being able to race, the best breaststrokers in the world, both in the 100 and the 200, and stay with them or beat them sometimes is definitely going to bring a lot of confidence. going into trials in the Olympics this year. But yeah, I just wanted to race again. We kind of did a meet prep for like trials in the Olympics. So I did the 2 breast in the morning, yards, because that was the pool that I have access to. And then I actually suited up again at night and did a semifinal and did it short course meters. And then I did another race the night after short course meters. So I actually ended up doing 3 2 breaststrokes last week, suiting up. I think it was a really good training experience. Definitely hurt, a lot to learn from, but ISL, a lot of the races I was at least, rested a little bit for, or the races like semifinals, I was rested a little bit for. And just the way that the meets lined up, the third or the second and third meet, we didn't have much time in between. There were only, I think, Felix, 2 days in between our second match and our third match. So, there wasn't really enough time to get the aerobic base back up high and get that yardage in. So I think I was a little bit rested for that one as well, just naturally. So it was fun. I mean, I think racing, especially the longer events, is really important, doing it pretty frequently. So that's kind of, I think, what the game plan is moving forward. We saw how well I performed at ISL with the back-to-back races and how much I benefited from them. So we kind of are taking that and putting it to practice moving forward.
Thank you, Emily. Felix, a question to you. Bruno already pinpointed your incredible performance with a 3:37 in the 400 freestyle. But I have a question for you about the semifinal. It seemed like the semis were your off match. I mean, you weren't performing, it seemed like, up to your abilities. What happened there?
I think that's something I have had a couple times. It's when I want a little bit too much of myself, or I think there's something possible where I could surprise a lot of people, and I know that I'm physically capable of doing it. I tend to like cramp up a little bit and get too tense, and especially in the 400 free, this is something you can see right away. It's like you start out a little bit too slow, but you're actually putting more effort in it, and then the whole race falls apart. Usually in all other events, I feel like a 50, 100, or 200, it won't be that noticeable. You would go like 2 or 3 seconds slower in a 200, a couple times slower in 100. But in the 400, this comes back really bad. And it actually hurts more than when you have a normal race. So it felt good finishing that race, knowing it was done, but definitely something I could learn from. And you just have those races, especially when I think I raced 5 400 frees in that time. I've never been a swimmer who has been really consistent with his races. I've been a swimmer who had fast races, but also really slow ones when it mattered. So I think it gave me a good opportunity to actually like get confident in being more consistent. And I think I've been more consistent than I usually was. I had 4 good races, 1 not so good race. So I take that, but it's definitely something I was thankful for in the end that I had that kind of race, because sometimes when you have a good race, you forget what you're actually bad at. And that reminded me and was a wake-up call again that, hey, there's still stuff you need to work on. There's stuff you're not good at yet. So learn from it. And then next season, hopefully I won't have to swim again.
Thank you, Felix. Also a question for you as a sort of more on the longer side of distances in the ISL. How much does it actually matter for you, especially in the 400 event? The people that you're swimming next to, when you have, for example, like Mihaila Romanchuk or Danas Rapsis next to you, does it play a huge role versus when you're swimming relatively alone?
It makes a big difference. In the 400 especially, such a tactical race, and there are some guys taking out really fast, like Rapsis, so you're basically swimming 100 and he's already like a body length ahead, and you're just like, you need to learn how to stay focused and not get nervous in that situation, because these things just happen and the race is still not over yet. And what I like about racing people right next to me in those longer events is they actually are able to help you carry through the pain. If you race right next to them, it's like you have a 200 done, there's still a 200 to go, but you're so much into that race, you're trying to beat the person next to you, that the next 7,500 is flying by, and it actually makes both of us faster. And that's what I love about those longer events, is it takes my mind away of focusing so much on the pain, just gets me in this position of really competing right next to each other.
Thank you, Felix. Emily, would you say the same goes for you in the 2 breast? I'm assuming the 100 breast, you don't end up looking at your opponents too much. It's really like a dash, isn't it? And you end up sticking to the strategy. But the 2 breast, do you at all get intimidated when someone like takes it out with a 105 or something like that, or when you know someone's going to come back really strong? Does it matter for you?
Course. Yeah, I think I've been racing Lily for years now, and she is the fastest breaststroker in the world, and is specifically like amazing at the shorter distances. So, my race strategy for the 100 versus her race strategy is a little bit different. It used to be a big struggle for me. So I went to a small mid-major college. I went to UMBC. And there, most of the time in the 2 breast, I was winning and I was ahead by a lot. So I kind of learned how to swim without having people next to me, and kind of just knowing that I had to go out fast and I would be out really fast. And then you go into these big meets, you go from your small, D1 small mid-major school into NCAAs, and you realize that you're a really small fish in a really big sea. And then it's the total opposite, where you are nowhere near anyone. And that's mentally, it's really hard mentally to see people go out so much faster than you. And you're still trying to swim your own race, and you're focused on the strategy that you and your coach, established and that has worked for you in the past. But, there are people that are so much faster, and swim their race so much more differently. So I've really had to learn how to not panic when people were in front of me. And even next to me. I mean, like Felix is saying, it's so fun to race someone, but it's also, really hard if you end up getting a little bit tired and they start pulling ahead, and you see them slowly every single stroke pulling further and further ahead. It's really mentally, it's a mental strain. So it's definitely helped. I've learned a lot, how to not really focus on where people are, especially in the 200. I am more of a back half swimmer, so I can't go out as fast as, Lily or a lot of other people. Kind of takes me a little bit to get into the race. And just, making sure that you're swimming your own race and you're aware of people around you, but you don't let it impact your ability or your race. So I think it helped a lot, last year and this year, just being able to race Lily more often, especially in the ISL, and race all of these, world ranked breaststrokers, being able to see that you're slowly catching up in the end really, really helps. But having someone there in front of you, just a little bit in front, to push you to go faster, is also really encouraging. So I think it's a little bit of both, but it's definitely a learning curve. And I've improved a lot. I mean, you can always get your mental game a little bit stronger, especially for races like that. Yeah, definitely. But I also know what Felix is talking about. Sometimes he said, less is more. Sometimes when you're so stressed about a race, or you're going out so fast and you want it to be so fast, you end up swimming slower, and it's so much harder. It's like the worst feeling in the world. You feel like you're going so much faster. You're working so hard. You're exhausted. You touch the wall and you were like, what? That was so much harder than what I swam the other day. And the other day was so much faster. So you kind of just have to like find your groove as an athlete and as a swimmer, and know, what works for you.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Felix. Yeah. Guys, let's get a little bit more abstract. Your performance of the team, New York Breakers in general this season, how satisfied are you? I mean, you made it to the semis, but you didn't make it to the final. So it's not good or bad, if you look at it of a grand scheme of things. But from another point of view, every team has a different goal and a different plan set up for the season. Were you guys happy with how New York Breakers did?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we all were really happy with it as a team. I think the coaches were really happy with it. Tina, general manager, was really happy with it. I mean, if you look at it comparatively from last year, so I was on the New York Breakers last year as well. And it was the first season of ISL. Recruiting had started really late. I think everyone was trying to understand how to form a team and figure out how to recruit people from all over the world, and just like put it together to make, a good team. And last year we were not as good, not anywhere near as good as we were this year. I think we performed really well. I think everyone was happy with it. I think that we had very little expectation, of the New York Breakers as a team coming into the second season of ISL because of our performances from last year. And I think, we really opened a lot of people's eyes, and they were impressed with how well we were able to swim. So I think as a whole, We had some really, really great swims. We had some okay swims. I think as a whole, as a team, most people were dropping best times or really close to best times, throughout the entire season. So that's really all you can ask for, for swimmers to perform above and beyond what they were capable of before they came into ISL. So we had a lot of records broken, different country nationality records and everything. So I think everyone was really happy with it. Yeah.
Thanks, Emily. Same for you, Felix?
Yeah, so I didn't have the experience from last year, but I think what made us so strong, there's like the bottom 3-4 teams, they're very similar. And then at the end, it's like who is really performing better on that day. And I think we had a really good coaching staff who made the right choices many times to beat out these other teams to make it into semifinals. We're still a little bit far away from making the finals. It's still like another stepping stone for us. And there's like another field of other teams ahead of us in like this top end tier field. I think everybody knows where we have to get better. Our relays aren't the best. That's something where we lose a lot of points. If we can stabilize those relays, that would be a huge factor for us, because I think so far we almost always finished maybe like 4th, 5th, and then 7th, 8th on the relays, so lowest points or second lowest points. Once we get that will make a huge difference. I think that's important for the next years, because that's double points, and you can't give double points away. I mean, if you make 1 point or 2 point, that is not the double point we want to make. We want to make the big double points. And we had a couple close matches. I think the second match of us, we were like 30 or 40 points behind Iron. When we get those relays going, those 40 points are in really quickly. But I also think we had great individual swim. We had Marco winning 4 to 5 to 200 breaststrokes. We had many individual swims. So I think like you can't really say that we are one of the weaker teams in the aspect of individual swimmers, because I think 80 or 90% of swimmers on our team would have been able to be on every other team in the ISL. So I think that is an important step and something to remember. And yeah, I'm excited for next year and see how that works out and what new additions we will have and how teams are going to change in the future.
No, 100%. We're excited to see you guys perform next season. And
you were.
Yeah, we also had a lot of Australians that weren't able to come. Sorry.
Oh yeah, of course. The Aussies. I mean, I'd heard a bunch of teams, right? London Roar, you guys, the Cali a little bit.
I think we had 6 to 7. So yeah, 6 or 7. But we still had Brandon Smith, who was from Australia, and he still competed. So that was great to see him there.
Yeah, and you mentioned your teammates, and it seemed that the breakers had an amazing team unity, because what I saw, it made me really want to be a part of your team. And it's like the breakers are a mix of experienced swimmers with young swimmers, but that all of them had a lot of international experience, like yourself, for example, Felix at the University of Michigan, being a leader there, Emily at UMBC. You also had an amazing NCAA career and being a leader. Tell me a little bit about the team unity and how those age group came together.
Yeah, the team atmosphere this year was really, really cool. It was a lot of fun. Probably the most fun I've had swimming and competing. I mean, I loved college, but this was like a whole nother level of closeness and competition. So it was really, really fun. I think, being kind of trapped and isolated in a bubble with people for 6 weeks with really just your team. I mean, of course, there were other teams there, but they kind of tried to limit our interaction with other teams because of the risk of COVID, which makes sense. So we were really just with each other for most of us 5 weeks, some 6 weeks, just getting to know each other, getting to train with each other, and just getting to hang out back at like the hotel and go on walks outside and on the island. So the team atmosphere was really good this year, definitely better than last year. Everyone was in it for the team. Everybody wanted to step up and swim fast for the team. And it was fun. I got to meet people from all over the world that I would have never met otherwise, people that are going to be really close friends with for the rest of my life. And just, I think that everyone wanted to have fun and train fast and swim fast. So it kind of it was, we were kind of relaxed and trying to just have fun with it and get to know each other. We played a lot of card games and board games in the team room in between practices or competitions. Had a lot of team bonding nights and movie nights, and just tried to make the most of it since we were all trapped there for 5 weeks together.
Thank you, Emily. Sort of picking up from where Bruno ended. Bruno, remember throughout the entire competition, we were commentating, especially through the qualification stage, of how incredible the New York Breakers atmosphere is, how much they cheer for each other, how much they are behind the backs of their teammates.
Yeah, that teamwork was crazy.
But during the semis, it seemed like this wasn't quite there. Like it seemed like something was missing from your team atmosphere. I mean, me and Bruno even went as far as to joke that you guys need someone to retire from your team, because when Peter Teemers was retiring, what you guys did was just insane. And it was so heartwarming and heart-touching at the same time. Yeah, it was amazing to see. But what happened for you guys at the semis? Did something happen within the team, or you were just not on your game?
I think we lost a lot of people before. We had three swimmers less going into semifinals than we did in the prelim matches. So that made a huge difference. We didn't even have a full roster for the girls. So I think everybody had to swim. There was no reserve swimmer. So everything, like, we really had to spread out the events as good as possible. And maybe, I don't know, Emily, how many times did you swim on the first day? It was like
semifinals. I think 4 races, semifinals.
Yeah. So I think the feeling is why it looked like the energy was gone was because everybody was swimming as well. There was no one having.
Yeah, there was no one in the box.
Especially the girls. For the boys, there were some guys, but for the girls were gone. They were so busy. They had to swim all the time. No one got a race off there. So I think that made a huge difference. And I mean, the pressure keeps rising going into semifinals as well. So, like in prelims, some of the better teams, they can take out a little bit at some races. They know they made it through. They will make it through into the semifinals. Semifinals is just one match. If you don't make it there, if you don't show up, you're out. So every team, raised their level a little bit. Especially the better teams had a lot left in the tank. Whereas actually we had our best second day ever at semifinals. What didn't look like that because the other teams went so much faster than they did in the prelim matches, but we did as well. Didn't get noticed, but yeah, I think it was a learning situation, because I think next year we know we have to be on a full roster. It just gets too competitive at that point. And yeah, I think that's the big takeaway from that semifinal from us.
Yeah, I don't think that there was, maybe you perceived it as, or maybe it looked like there was less, excitement and cheering going on, but I don't think that was how we felt at all. I think we were all really hyped and excited for semifinals, but like Felix said, I mean, if you have so many races, you have no time to get back to the box. You're going from your race, to cool down, back up to your race, back to the cool down pool. Especially, for me personally on that first day and the other breaststroker, I know we were back and forth a lot, just trying to get all our races done. Whereas, the meets before, I had a little bit of time where I could go and cheer in the box or watch part of the meet, and not have to be back in the cool down pool watching the whole time. But the energy off stage for us was really high still.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Emily. We've already touched a bit upon this, but Emily, this is the second season in ISL for you. Felix, you're a rookie. How did you guys end up on the New York Breakers roster? What inspired your decision? Did any other teams contact you?
I watched ISL last year, so I watched when I was a senior at Michigan, and I really wanted to do it. And then, I mean, like, with everything got really weird in March, April, and I reached out to all the teams, but actually no one wanted me. So I was
really?
Yeah. And then a couple of days later, Martin emailed me again, and he was like, can we set up a call? And then we talked, and then he asked me if I could come on a team. So yeah, I mean, I'm really glad it worked out that way, because I didn't have a choice to join a different team. But in the end, I don't think there would have been a different team I'd rather be on, because we had so much fun and I really enjoyed my experience.
Yeah, for me, I was on the New York Breakers last year. I don't think I wasn't really heavily recruited last year before season 1. But I mean, I live in New York and I'd love to represent New York. So it was kind of an honor for me. And I had a lot of fun with the meet last year and loved being on New York Breakers. And this year I was reached out to by a few different teams. But before it was the Solidarity project that New York Breakers, offered me the most. And I kind of just wanted to stay on the New York Breakers and represent New York.
Makes sense. Thank you. What do you guys think about the new drafting season? Meaning that each team will have 10 athletes, 10 girls, 10 boys that they get to keep. And then the rest of the athletes on the roster will be pretty much up for grabs. What do you guys think of this system?
I like it a lot. The only thing I still don't know is like what happens to all the Australians, which were assigned to teams basically before they had to leave. Because if they are still in the draft, it will make it way more entertaining. So I hope they are, because everybody can grab them then. And I think it will balance the teams more. I think 10 swimmers is still like a very high amount of swimmers. There are 12 swimmers on individual swims. So it's not that you're losing your entire team. You're losing like 2 swimmers, which you have to give up from individual swims. That's like a tiny bit, but you can make the difference to even it out over the years. So I think that's the right step to do.
Yeah, I think it makes it, more comparable to a lot of other pro sports. I mean, we watch, football, baseball, hockey, so many different pro sports do it this way. And if we want to become a pro sport like the rest of them, I think we kind of have to adapt and do it a similar way. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be fun to, watch the draft if they make like a big deal about it. And like Felix said, I think it helps it will help eventually kind of equal out all the teams a little bit, make it a little bit more fun and competitive and fun to watch. I think 10 people, yeah, it's a lot to keep though. I don't know if they'll continue doing it the same throughout, because then the team is basically the same every single year, which has its, pros and cons, but I'm excited to see how it goes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, thank you. Well, to answer your question, Felix, the Australians will be on this draft.
Oh, nice.
And Emily, the idea behind having 10 people of every gender stay on each team is we really want the teams to stay like stable throughout the seasons, so they can gain their fan base. And if the teams end up changing drastically every year, it will be harder to do. But I see your point also.
What happens, for example, if like people retire? I mean, after next year, I could see a lot of people retiring. It's the Olympics, and then they might do another season of ISL, but probably then not the next year. Does the team get more draft spots then, or is it able to still have to like pick 10 people from the occurring roster? Because I mean, then they would have to go like to the relay alternates and reserve swimmers to have the 10 people roster, and that would weaken them.
Yeah,
they get to pick from the 10 people.
What happens if they don't want to keep 10 people?
Then they can just stop the contract with the swimmer if they have the ability to do so with the club. But it depends on the individual contract of the swimmer.
Interesting.
To tell you the truth, it's quite unlikely to happen. We have already quite a talent pool right now in ISL, and especially considering in the future we're looking to have 12 teams in total, adding 2 new teams. The teams will be hungry for athletes that are currently present in the ISL for sure. I don't really see teams deciding to stop their contract with athletes.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Felix, another question to you. What do you think of the 800 freestyle as a new addition to the ISL?
I mean, I might be biased, but I loved it. It's another event for me to swim. Probably strengthens my ability as an ISL swimmer a lot. I mean, the 200 works fine, but then in the 200, those guys just have too much speed. I can hang out on those prelim matches, but when they step it up for semifinals, I'm not there yet. And the 800, I love the format with going out hard in the 100 and the 400, making extra points. Actually making like the same points if I would win the 800 at the end. but really have to hold on to it because there's a 15-second jackpot time. So if you go all out the first 100, you're probably not going to be in the 15 seconds at the end of the 800. So that makes it like very interesting to swim, as well as you can checkpoint at the 100 and at the 400 and at the end as well. So I think it will give distance swimmers a huge value, scoring points. And what I'm most excited about, you will access another pool of distance swimmers all over the world, because a lot of them didn't swim ISL this season because they said, hey, I just have the 400 free. It's not worth it for me to come. My main events are the 800 and the 1500. But every 1500 swimmer has a really good 800. So I think there are a lot of many swimmers out there who will be able or want to compete next year in the ISL. And that just excites me.
Yeah. And a potential of such a huge point swing, right?
Oh yeah, I think you can have like 20 plus points easily in that 800 race for one swimmer.
And Felix,
on that all strategy too. Like what the goal is your goal to win, or is it to, try and get all the other, wins in between and score points that way, and then not worry about that final?
It always depends on the field. Every single race would be different, because I mean, you could put a good 200 swimmer in it hoping to win the 100 and 400, but then the second swimmer might be a really good 800 swimmer, not so good going out hard, trying to win the 800. So it will be really interesting to see a couple more races and the strategy developing as well.
Yeah, and it seemed that in that 800 that you swam, you went very hard on the 100, 200, 400. I have to ask this, how painful was it to finish that 800?
To be honest, when I flipped at the 400, I was like, wow, this was like, I mean, I went faster than my last 400 in the prelim, in the semifinals. So I swam faster the first 400, and I was like, it was like, first of all, I had the feeling of relief that I made it first at the 100 and the 400. But I was like, all right, now fight through it. Don't be behind 15 seconds, because you will lose everything in the end. So it was a lot of pain. I mean, that was probably one of the most painful experience I had swimming wise. Just because no one goes out that hard at 800, it just would be stupid. But I mean, if there are points and money to give, then like you're stupid. So that happened to me, and I was really happy that like a lot of the breakers teammates were cheering in the box, and that helped a lot. All the other swimmers didn't have anyone to cheer for. So I was really happy that was the case, because it really carried me through. And I mean, once I hit the 700 meter mark, I was like, all right, just 100, I can do it now. And felt really, really happy at the end. I learned so much, because I didn't know I can basically hold on pretty well to it. I would have never tried it before to swim it this way, but I went a 342 and a 348. So, I mean, it's like I added a lot of time, but it was still manageable to come back pretty well compared to how I went out.
Yeah,
thank you, Felix.
Change the way I feel like people swim the race too.
Yeah.
Like if they have to, think about going out really fast, which probably most people in an 800 don't. But if you have someone that is able to hold on really well, they could, break new boundaries that they've never even thought about, just because they're trying to, win the money and win all the points. Should be cool.
100%. And the way Felix describes it, I feel like we might see some people not finishing races next season. That would be a spectacle to see. But guys, with that being said, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about motivation and motivation to swimming. Obviously, it was a strike for everyone when we discovered that the Olympic Games would happen in 2020. They're postponed until 2021. Hopefully, they will happen. But let's fantasize a little bit, and let's say the Olympic Games happen, but COVID remains. That means world champs, Europeans, Pan Ams, all this is going to be very challenging to host and to make happen. And how would your motivation to swimming look like? Like, would it be affected at all if the COVID doesn't change much? Or would you be looking forward to the ISL bubbles potentially? I don't know. Could you open up on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think, I mean, given the circumstances last year, we all kind of had to adjust our perceptions and realize that, there are a lot of things that we can't control. and they're going to happen, and we just kind of have to make the best with what we can control. So my mindset after, a little bit of depression about trials and the Olympics being postponed was, maybe another year will, like I've been improving so far, maybe this other year will give me a better shot at making the team, so I think just kind of like revisiting it and trying to put it in a different perspective, and realize that there are, like I said, only certain things that you can control. Speaking about those other meets, I think ISL is going to be a big contender. I think it's a lot of fun for athletes, and that's something that, once you get to a pro level, you're doing it because you love it, but it's also your job. And sometimes you forget about the fun in swimming and the fun in competing. And I think ISL kind of brings that back, and it still gives you the money, and it still gives you great competition and great training, but it's also fun, and you're racing for not yourself, for your team. And I think that's what a lot of people thrive on. Me in particular, I absolutely love that. So I think ISL will be a very big contender, especially to a lot of other competitions, because people will see they can make, just as much, if not more money, and have a lot more fun doing it, and have a big team base, and, really have people there for each other. So I think, hopefully it continues the way it is going right now. And I think it's going to be really big in the swimming world. I think people are going to really want to be a part of it, and will give up going to other meets to go to ISL meets.
Thanks, Emily. Felix, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a shame if World Championships or Europeans would never happen again, or like would maintain not to happen, just because, I love representing my country, and it's pretty important to me, and I love that part. But then also swimming ISL this season, I realized how much more fun swimming could be. It's more entertaining to watch as a spectator anyway, to watch ISL, but also as a swimmer, it is more exciting to compete in a field like that. And I think, I don't know what the plan of the ISL is, but yeah, being a professional swimmer, trying to live not of like this one meet per year you have. That's what we do with Worlds and Europeans and the Olympics. It's maybe 1 or 2 meets per year, which actually matter. And I would love to see a change in that, with competing many times through the year on a high level like that. Makes it for us as well more entertaining and more fun swimming, because you have these changes in your practice where okay, in 2 or 3 weeks I have another meet again, get ready, and just getting this routine. And I really like that aspect of ISL in the 6 weeks, that I knew at a meet I had to recover, I had to get ready, and then compete, and do this over 4 or 5 cycles. Was a lot of fun, and I hope this is something what we will be able to keep pushing in the future.
Interesting. Thanks, Felix. Because it's a very new format for swimming, having to race a large number of meets in a short period of time, relatively short, like 6 weeks. And I actually wanted to ask you this, Felix, Emily, would you prefer this format where everyone gets together for a period of 4 to 6 weeks, competes, and then leaves? Or do you prefer the format where everyone gets together for a weekend, they compete, then they leave, they don't see each other for a couple of weeks, then they come together again, and a season takes place like this? Or do you prefer the bubble system?
I think there are pros and cons to both. Just like if you have a job, or you're in school, or, something other than just training, this bubble format is very complicated. So I'm in grad school, and I was in grad school over the course of the bubble, and I had to, stay up on Tuesdays from 10 to 2 a.m. to be in class online and Zoom. It worked because everything was online for me this year, but it was also, a little bit stressful being in a whole different country, and still trying to communicate with my professors and talk to my classmates, and making sure I was on top of everything and getting things done. And obviously, if you have a job outside of just training full time, which a lot of us do, also makes a little bit of a struggle. But on the contrary, it was really fun to just, be in a place and not have to worry about travel, or, really getting to know your teammates and not just coming and then leaving. But I think either way it would work. I don't think personally, I'm not sure if I would be able to give up another 6 weeks just away and not return home. So I think I would kind of prefer maybe a couple weeks here, and then going back home for a little while and focus on training, and then going out somewhere else. Because I also kind of liked it last year, being able to travel to different places. Obviously COVID, and I don't know what's going to happen next year, but COVID puts that at, a little bit higher of a risk. But, it was kind of cool being able to go to different cities and different countries and kind of see the world. I think that's kind of a nice part about ISL as well. So it would be a little bit sad to have that taken away.
Thanks, Emily. So for you, it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's positives and negatives to both aspects. Okay. Felix, what about you? You prefer the bubble system?
I think the bubbles were great during a pandemic. I mean, I didn't hear about anyone getting COVID while we were over there, and all teams were able to compete in their full roster size, basically. And if people left, it was never because of COVID. So, I mean, that's great. That shows that it worked. But while Emily was talking about that, I was thinking, like, the great thing about swimming is we can bring swimming to different countries. There are new people who have never seen a swim match like that before. And if we would do it the bubble format, we would always stay at one place. I mean, if we do it in Hungary, the pool probably would be still full every single time we're competing because people love swimming. But if you have the chance to bring a swimming format competition like this all over the world to different places, and actually being able to like mobilize fans and who start to love swimming just because there might be a team which is based there and they have to meet for the first time there and really like it a lot, it will also push more young kids towards swimming, what I would love to see. And I think our message has to be a little bit bigger than just like, we do it for ourselves as well, to compete and make money and to see who is the best in our sport. But there's so many people out there, I think we should bring swimming to, and they should learn about the sport and make it one of the big sports. That would be a dream for me.
Yeah, I agree. And being able to travel and have kids come and watch those meets is also going to build, the ISL fan base and get more people watching on TV and just, encourage swimming as a big sport all 4 years and not just, every Olympics.
Exactly. Thanks, Felix and Emily. And the ISL does, in fact, have big plans of engaging more of the community, and especially more of the child community. We'll have a specialized online league for kids that will be part of the ISL, but I can't spoil it too much for you guys just yet, especially for our viewers. But it's coming. Trust me. You'll hear more about it in the following months.
Great.
But with this being said, Emily, Felix, we know you're busy athletes, so we don't want to jeopardize too much of your time. But with the remainder of our time, do you guys want to say anything to the New York Breakers fans?
Emily, what do you think about? Emily's only from New York on our team, actually.
Swimming, in New York isn't huge. It's not like a big thing. So,
not a big city, right?
What?
It's not a big city, New York.
No, it's a huge city, but it's not as big as, a lot of, like Florida, California. I feel like swimming is so big out there because outdoor pools are open all year and people really do swim all year round. Like there were people that I knew, around me that I'd known, and they were like, wait, you swim in the winter? And I'm like, yeah, of course I swim in the winter. What do you mean? You don't think I swim in the winter? Because they honestly, some people just don't know that you can go to a pool and swim in the winter, aside from like, local gyms that have a couple lap lanes. So I think the ISL is really big. I think it'll help, New York a lot. I mean, New York is such a crazy, fun city, and getting more swimmers and kids interested in it. And, especially New Yorkers with their teams. We have so many New York teams, and New York loves their teams and loves watching sports. So hopefully New York Breakers will be one of those big teams that people will represent. I saw someone actually in a grocery store once wearing a New York Breaker shirt. It ended up being like a family friend that knew me, that knew my family and knew me. And my dad had probably given him the shirt. He probably didn't even buy it, but just like looking at a New York Breaker shirt in a supermarket was like the coolest thing ever. And I was like, yes, this is what it needs to be. And so, I mean, it's exciting, and hopefully people will be able to watch, and New Yorkers will, get on the bandwagon and start representing and supporting us.
Emily, it's just the beginning of the ISL takeover. You're about to see ISL shirts all around.
I hope so.
Felix, what about you? Any words of encouragement to the fans?
I'm thankful that they supported us through our 6 weeks in Budapest. I think we really felt that support in Budapest, but it's not easy. I mean, it was all through social media. And I hope you stay a big fan of our team, and I hope we will exceed your expectations next year.
And maybe we'll have a meet in New York.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
That would be amazing.
That's what we need to set up. Okay.
Madison Square Garden.
I don't know if you guys know, but we actually had a Discord channel set up for this season. And on the Discord channel, we asked people to be, as part of the program, to be ambassadors for teams. And it was completely up to the people, ambassadors of which teams they would like to become. And giving you a little bit of insight, your team was amongst the 3 most popular requests for being an ambassador for. So you guys have a serious fan base.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was kind of hard to tell, I guess, since we were away and, just in Budapest in our own little world for 6 weeks. Definitely hard to know who's watching and how many people are watching and rooting us on. But it's really nice to hear that.
But yeah, with that being said, Felix, Emily, thank you so much for making it to this podcast. We hope to see you back here in the future. For all of our listeners, we'll have another podcast happening this Friday with the Toronto Titans athletes, and we will be analyzing match 4 this Sunday. So please join us. And Emily, Felix, thank you so much.
Thank you.